Greetings, metalheads. We are Headlight Productions, a metal music company dedicated to promoting material from metal bands. We also study metal culture, and at this time, we want to share with you a quick review created by us and taken from the Encyclopedia Metallum database website. The data parameters collected were between March 9th and March 12th, 2021. The sample number totaled 75,689 bands. So how did we do it? It had to be done manually. Considering metal in general, we will find that in the 20 most frequent metal subgenres, black metal stands at first place, followed by death metal as the most frequent. Maybe people like to make dark and brutal music. As a side note, because Encyclopedia Metallum users are free to merge subgenres in the website, we weren't able to subgroup all the subgenre sample categories neatly. There are too many choices. On the website, you can see listings of hybrid subgenres such as blackened thrash metal, melodic black metal, gothic black metal, raw black metal, and blackened death metal. Some people think these distinctions are necessary, yet others may simply prefer to group all these into just black metal. Anyway, we all know that extreme metal divides itself endlessly into subgenres, sub-subgenres, and sub-sub-subgenres for your listening or exhausting pleasure. Of the 20 countries with the most bands, the United States comes in first place, followed by Germany and Brazil. However, the US alone has 19.8%. The US is numerically number one. But as a continent, Europe has produced more bands, totaling 26,310 active metal bands, which comprises 44.3% of the graph. The average lifespan of all listed bands is 12.1 years, and the oldest active band is Olympic from the Czech Republic, with 59 years of activity until now, and were included in Metal Archives because of their album
Když ti svítí zelená,
released in 1988, which has a heavy metal style. I won't even try to pronounce the name of that album. It also seemed relevant to identify those bands whose lyrical themes relate to Christianity, totaling 940 active metal bands from the full sample. Within the 20 most frequent genres in Christian metal, heavy metal comes in first place, followed by black metal. One interesting cultural note is that within the Christian metal scene, there has been a tendency to use the term unblack metal instead of black metal for ideological reasons. But Metal Archives doesn't recognize that particular term as a musical subgenre. So tell us what you think about this in the comments. We're curious. Remember those 3 countries with the most metal bands? The trend repeats itself for Christian metal as well. However, looking only at the numbers on this graph, Latin America has a total of 325 Christian metal bands, which comprises 40.8% of the graph. The average lifespan for a band is 17.5 years, and the oldest band is La Tierra Prometida, that means the Promised Land, from Mexico. With 50 years of activity until now, it was accepted by metal archives because of their heavy metal album titled Sígueme, which means Follow Me, which was released in 1993. Sometimes we might get the idea that there is an ideological struggle between Christians and non-Christians in metal music that would normally take up most of the lyrical content. However, when reviewing the full sample and selecting lyrical themes, those who explicitly claim to speak in favor of Christ and God represent only 1%. And those who explicitly speak in favor of Satanism or against Christianity are only at 3%. The other 96% of bands write about other things, like fantasy, death, war, social issues, etc. To make this distinction, we use different variations of search keys for both lyrical themes. For some people, this difference is very important. For others, not so much. But we prefer to make this distinction since, after all, our duty is to investigate. To be fair, maybe the worldview struggle occurred in the 90s and stayed back there. Today, both sides have learned to either coexist or develop alternative ways to present their ideas. Another interesting piece of information regarding metal in general is the number of albums released so far. Among the 20 bands with the greatest number of full-length albums released are Buckethead, Marco Di Stasio, Senmuth, and Slick to the Back Teeth. Who have more than 100 albums, but Buckethead is the only one with the most albums released. 320 albums, which is an insane number for any collector to attempt to find.
Yeah.
And within the top 20 most common names, we have the Roman numerals as the most used. So if you want to be original, avoid any of these 20 names for your next album. Finally, one of our interests is to understand variables related to health. And in Metallum, we can see some interesting things about mortality rates. We found that within mortality, deaths of band members increased per year. However, the main factor to consider is that in the years 1971 through 1983, there were not as many metal bands as in the present. However, we were able to calculate the death rate in 2020, which was 5.3 dead artists for every 1,000 bands. By analyzing only the causes of death registered up to March 2021, we can find a total of 3,087, of which medical causes and accidents are the most recurrent. Although suicide represents 15.4%, it's an alarming number that deserves attention. According to the World Health Organization, every 40 seconds a person dies by suicide in the world. Close to 800,000 people die due to suicide every year. Suicide is the third leading cause of death in 15 to 19-year-olds, and 79% of global suicides occur in low and middle income countries. Yet 41.4% of the total dead artists died of unknown causes, so this graph is only for reference. If we had all the records, we'd get a better picture of this data. On the other hand, while we reviewed the data, we found uncommon or strange causes of death, highlighting the following: struck by lightning, death by seizure, death by Kiss nightclub fire, death by insult, but was modified to stroke, choked on chewing gum during narcotic sleep, death by accidental hanging during Black Mass, death by accidental exsanguination during ritual, death by heart failure from stress, death by being thrashed by a security guard, killed by vehicle-based explosive device in Chaldea, Iraq, death by trichloroethylene overdose. And the one that most catches our attention is accidental hanging during Black Mass and exsanguination during ritual. If you want to call ghosts, demons, or Satan, you need to be well prepared before making the ritual. Interestingly enough, from 2019 to 2020, a new cause of death appeared within the top 5 analyzed, which is COVID-19 deaths for musicians, which appeared in the database in 2020 with 11 artists dying because of the virus. Is it death by virus or death by existing health complications? You be the judge. We just want to analyze data. And the bands with the most dead members from their ranks are the ones in this graph, highlighting Olympic with 21 dead members. But it's important to clarify that these members could have belonged to another band as their main band, and only at some point have been part of bands analyzed here. As a way of recognizing the work of those past artists who contributed to rock and metal music, we made this wall of honor for the bands Olympic and Deep Purple.
Maže můj strop, si každej srop, může být vlastní podlahou. Řekl jsem si, to jsou řeči, k tomu jalový. Zkusím.
If you like this video, and if you want us to continue conducting studies within the metal culture, we invite you to collaborate in our surveys, which you can find in the description of this video. And please, tell us in the comments section what you think about this data and whatever else you'd like to see. We are Headlight Productions, we love metal, and we study metal culture. Subscribe to this channel, and see you next time.